Hey everyone, and welcome to part 3. This is the small business lobbying, the power of small businesses. And so when I'm out here in front of my garden, and this is the only place in my, hi, it's my neighbor going by, this is the only place in my whole house where I get full sun. So I've been building this little garden, and I've got some beans over here. Let's see. And then I've got some carrots. This is a couple rows of carrots, and then I put one plant of heirloom tomatoes. I've kind of learned my lesson over the years. I always end up planting too many tomatoes and they take over the whole thing. So it's just, I don't have a whole lot of space, because again, this is the only place on my lot where I get full sun. It's just right next to the driveway, but it has worked the last couple years as just kind of a nice little summer garden. Okay, so what are we talking about this video? Well, we're talking about small business leverage, and most of the time we think of small businesses as not having a whole lot of leverage. What if they get together, they can create quite a bit of it. So we have a couple of examples in the book. One of them, which we've talked about before, I think even before we went to the distance learning, we talked about dealer lobbying. So automobile dealers. They are famous for this, about negotiating very good or lobbying for very, very strong dealer protection laws. So things like requiring a license in order to sell cars, and by doing that and creating an agency, it gives them an opportunity for agency capture, which is something we've talked about. And it limits manufacturer leverage in the contracts. I think I may have told the story already, but when General Motors closed down Oldsmobile back in I think it was in the 90s, it cost them $1 billion because they had to buy out the value of the franchise agreements, the dealer agreements with all of their dealers. They had to basically buy their businesses from them and give them full value of that business in order to close down Oldsmobile. They couldn't just say, we're canceling the contract. Now in the Great Recession, when GM went bankrupt, that is exactly what they did when they closed down Hummer and Saturn. They just said to the dealers, look, we're canceling this contract, and they did that in bankruptcy. Bankruptcy allows that. Then when the internet came around, the dealers realized this as a threat and were able to get some laws in place to prevent direct selling by manufacturers in their markets. Now, we also talked about this before. Tesla has been somewhat effective in being able to get these laws reversed so it can sell directly, but it still can't sell directly in every state. I think it's most states now, but not every state. Now, gasoline dealers went the other way. Their strategy was to lobby for a national protection, and they got that. But the problem is that then the national courts interpreted that protection narrowly, and they no longer had the protection, the local the home field advantage of being in their local state and having their local state legislators protect them like they did before. So then they went back to look for that protection. But gasoline dealers have very poor contractual leverage with respect to the oil companies, much different than is the case with automobile dealers. And it just has to do with how good they were at negotiating. Now, franchises, we've already talked about it. We'll talk about it again, but franchises don't always have a whole lot of leverage with their franchisor. And so I mentioned it in the last video, or one of the previous videos, that I think it was the first one when I talked about franchises, that states have had to protect franchisees because these agreements tend to be so favorable to franchisors. But for the most part, if you violate or breach the franchise agreement, the franchisor usually reserves the right to terminate that agreement, and they don't have to buy out your business like GM had to do with Oldsmobile. So there are more government protections for franchises, but they are in a worse position leverage-wise usually than businesses like the car dealers. But when these small businesses do band together and lobby together, they can win for themselves usually some fairly good business protections. Real estate agents are very good at this as well, in building in legal protections to the multiple listing service, to the right to list and earn commissions for the sales of real estate. So I know this was kind of a short video. That's why I did it out here, because I'm out on my front driveway and I've already had one neighbor walk by and wonder what the heck I'm doing. But I'm going to move to another location in the house now. But what questions do you have about small businesses and small business leverage in contracts and in defining markets? Thanks for your questions and comments on the forum. I'll see you in the forums, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.